Well, first off, Steve, thanks for picking the most humid day of the year. You have five, six really sweaty guys up here, so thanks. I'll introduce a little bit about myself, and then I think we could just go down the row so everyone knows who we're talking to. So like Steve said, I've been in mobile for a while, and I oversee Mindshare's mobile practice. That means a lot of things on different days, but at the end of the day, we plan our clients' mobile media, mobile communication strategies, using media, without using media, whatever our clients' consumer-facing mobile properties are. That's where we like to be. So on that note, Lars?
I'm Lars Albright, CEO of SessionM, and we are a loyalty and monetization platform for mobile apps. And really what I want to focus on today as it relates to the question of does display banners or do they work is this notion of how we're approaching the space from the wrong perspective in terms of not providing user value, not providing reciprocity for the time that people invest in ads, and just relying on targeting and a banner format to try to get people in. So a big focus of ours as a company, along with driving more engaged users, is trying to figure out ways that we can deliver that value to users.
Hey y'all, I'm Louis Gump. I'm the CEO of LSN Mobile. LSN helps local publishers get their content to mobile devices and then monetize through ads. I've only been there since about February. Before that, I led the teams that transformed mobile at both CNN and the Weather Channel. So it's been quite a ride. In fact, Lars and I were talking beforehand about the first banners. Actually, it might have been Craig also. First banners in 05, 06 on mobile devices. So, you know, a topic that's been around the block a good bit, and there's lots of rich conversation. So looking forward to it.
Hi, I'm Michael Lieberman. I am co-president of Jewel US.
It works. Yeah, nice. Congrats.
So for the last 4 years, I've actually spent working inside MEC, which is one of Group M's agencies, and working across clients such as AT&T, Colgate, IKEA, Marriott, and really seeing what it is that they want to do on mobile, how they want to communicate, which sometimes can be a banner and sometimes goes well beyond. So I agree, a lot of rich conversation to be had.
Hi guys, Steve Minichini. I'm president of interactive marketing for TargetCast. TargetCast is a full-service marketing agency. I run the digital practice, and certainly, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows, day over day, mobile becomes a bigger piece of the consideration set for planners and as you're setting strategies. So this topic today around mobile banners and how effective are they, or how have they evolved, hopefully will provide some good insight and a rich discussion for you guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hi everybody, I'm Scott Swanson, the CEO of Mobile Theory. Mobile Theory is the in-house mobile advertising network for Opera. Opera is a mobile browser and the largest independent mobile browser, in addition to running the largest independent mobile ad serving platform, AdMarvel. And I oversee all demand that comes into that platform in the United States. I'm really interested in speaking about how design affects whether we've got efficacy in display advertising in mobile, and hope to engage in that conversation as well.
Cool. So for the record, I have an opinion too. Banners do work, just so everybody in the room realizes it. It really depends on what we're trying to do with the client. And in prepping for this call, I didn't want to take too much of a provocative tone because I think everyone has an opinion on that, but we all experience banners working every day. And for argument's sake, we'll say that a banner is an IAB, MMA approved rectangular square unit. That can offer some type of action, whether that's a click through to a website, whether that's engagement through a video or rich media. Banners sort of get a bad rap, but they do work, and they're sort of the initial point for a lot of mobile advertising that we work to do. So fun fact, about 2 out of every $10 spent on mobile goes towards banner ads, at least in 2012 in the US. And my question to the panel, and we can start with whomever, is how much of your time every day or your team's time is spent revolving around banners in some way, shape, or form? Because I know a disproportionate amount of my time is spent around banners, but what do you guys think?
Well, we come at it from a fair amount of time spent around banners, but coming at it from the opposite end, which is really talking about the benefits of not being trapped in the banner format and looking at the banner as more of a broken entry point into an ad experience. So before SessionM, I was at Apple in the iAd group for a couple years, and we spent a lot of time creating much better experiences in mobile, much better ads once you clicked, but we still had this limitation of we were still serving in a banner format. And as Craig points out, there were occasions where that worked, but more frequently than not, and increasingly so, it's not the way to go. And when you look at the stats, you see that up to, I think it's over 89% of people find banners irritating at the beginning. They look at them, they're irritating, they skip through them, they click on them by mistake. It's a pretty poor starting point if you're trying to deliver a message and trying to convey some sort of positive experience to users. So our belief is to say, yes, banners at times can work, so I'm not making any unilateral statement here that they don't, but you really have to be thoughtful about other formats and other ways, back to my initial comment, on how do you provide value? How do you make it clear to someone if they spend time, and there's so many different ways people can spend time in the digital landscape now, why is it worth their time? And you can't be naive to say, well, if I slap up a banner for a car ad and I hope someone clicks on it, it just doesn't cut it anymore. So I like to push people to think differently, and that's how I'm thinking about banners every day.
On that topic, it helps to look back in history a little bit. There's a company called Third Screen Media that started really the mobile advertising banner industry in the U.S. in around 05, 06. And I remember distinctly at the Weather Channel, we launched a banner for Aruba tourism in December of 05 that was non-clickable, and a clickable banner for American Express in February of 2006, which was clickable. And at the time, there was this mix of euphoria that, hey, look at this, we can finally start to monetize, because, oh, by the way, it sometimes gets forgotten that if you can't sell ads, then a lot of media businesses can't invest in the business, right? So this is a way to justify investment in the business. And then on the other hand, there was the whole, well, it's tiny, is it really going to work, et cetera. And so we're dealing with probably 3 or 4 generations later of the same conversation. So, I want to go on the record as saying first, of course, mobile banners work. They work in a lot of cases. And furthermore, if you look at local mobile advertising alone reaching, let's say, $9.1 billion in the US in 2017, there are actually going to be a lot more of them. At the same time, there's a better question to ask than do they work, although it's an excellent starting point. But one of the questions to ask is, how do we best serve our advertising clients? And how do we best serve consumers, which sometimes get left to the last, but actually should often be first? And that leads to lots of conclusions, and then banners will be part of the mix along with a bunch of other things.
I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I think to some degree we've all seen banners work and be quite effective at driving whatever outcomes we're choosing for our clients. But I think it's also important to put the measurement of what is success in context. Right? For digital advertising, we are happy if 99% of people ignore our ads and then 0.1 or something like that actually click. That's success. That's actually fairly horrible, but that's success. Mobile has managed to be a little better, but at the same time, unless you're counting something like view-through, which is still difficult to prove, we're talking about a flat 99% instead of a fraction of 99.5 that actually ignore our ads. So as an industry, I do agree. We have to find better ways to engage on each platform with that platform's strengths with our audiences in order to actually make a dent. Right? We're throwing our ad budgets at impressions, clicks, and eventually actions, and we're reaching maybe 1% of our audience in a meaningful way.
So I'm going to take a couple of different perspectives. Standard banners without an expansion. Without a pull down with a video, we're not doing much of it, to be honest. There's always an evolution in every space on how we're thinking about banner advertising. Who wants to talk about that? When it first came out, you're right, we could start to monetize content, and we were excited about the interaction. But not a lot of people are measuring, or should they be just measuring clicks today? That's a very old metric. Banners on the branding and display side, it is an entry point. It's almost like a gateway drug to how we're going to include video or how we're going to include data capture or what have you. Design is critical, and I think we're going to get there in a moment. But design is really important. You're working with a very small space. The message has to be easily received, and if you are using a banner to get to an expansion, you've got to close out or give that polite closeout. You've got to respect their time. It's common sense. That's on the branding side of it, and we're always looking for a response. There's also another side of my business and our business that's performance-driven. Click to download, and driving that with some kind of guarantee, and I'm only purchasing download. In that regard, I really like a standard banner. I like the expansion. I like the ability to purchase with a guarantee to some kind of back-end conversion. And we can, of course, argue how you track and what's accurate and that sort of thing. But I'm divided in my mind, and I think about it, and I know my team thinks about it in slightly different ways. Are we using this as a branding element? Do we want a simple message in connection with the environment? Or are we looking at this as a reach vehicle, a scale vehicle, and we're purchasing it with some kind of performance driver? And I think that's the approach that we take. And to get back to the simple question, it amazes me. I find that myself and my team, more and more, every day, every week, is allocated to mobile strategies and creative on mobile. We're a media shop, but we do creative as well. It's really starting to dominate the discussion, and I think it should be. I think where we are in this country, the curve is still straight up in terms of how we connect advertisers through their mobile device and that brand message to an intent, a consumer intent or need.
Yeah, I think we're in violent agreement up here on this panel, and starting with the fact that the banner, in my mind, is not the ad, actually. In my mind, the ad is the expansion panel, and the banner is an invitation to engage with the brand. And I think most of us would agree that that is really the opportunity to engage with the consumer. Secondly, from what we can see, most of the media spend that's been in mobile so far hasn't been able to do the kind of things that we've seen in television in terms of actually driving sales. So it's very difficult for us to know whether the branding has really worked. But I can speak about my own experience, and that is we recently completed an acquisition of a strict performance mobile ad network. So we acquired them about 2 months ago. And these guys get paid only on actions. And they actually don't do very much in download. They do like forms, like actually getting people to fill out forms on their device. And you wouldn't believe the revenue and the volume of leads that these guys get. It's shocking for most of us. And I wouldn't have believed it until we acquired them, and I went and kind of looked under the hood, and I was like, holy smokes. So my belief is that similar to online, when people were a little bit cagey about doing online banking or doing transactions on a computer, we've got a subset of people who are much more comfortable with transacting on a mobile device, and that market share and that share of the population is going to grow over time, and we'll all witness it, I think, up here on this panel.
So anyone care to give an example, keeping the client or the brand anonymous, however much detail you want to go into about a situation where, or vertical, we had talked about this before, where banners do work, whether they're rich media that starts with the banner or, just straight click-through or something as simple as that. Steve, I know you had a pretty strong entertainment example. If you
I'll go first. That's fine. So we have entertainment clients, several of them, and we also have travel and tourism clients, and we have actually quite a bit of financial that we're doing, mobile marketing and banner advertising for them. In the specific instance of entertainment, I mean, that's almost like a softball. The content there is terrific. You have the engaged audience through a Facebook post or tweet stream or what have you. As long as that ad is designed appropriately, we know that this is content that is appealing to a very specific segment of the population, and that interaction and shareability is going to be easily had. So the entertainment vertical seems to be a vertical that's just really ripe for full interaction, regardless of the type of technology that we're using. On the travel side, it's very focused on price and comparison, and we know that. As technology continues to advance, and it allows us to track more and more of how we're serving and sequencing messaging and price comparisons, I think that interaction and success will continue to grow. But I want to go back just quickly, to a point that you closed with. We've been talking about mobile and the year of mobile coming for the last 5 years, for the last 7 years. And I still think that we're really at the beginning for how comfortable consumers are with the mobile device and the permission that they give to the marketers. And I think really the sky is the limit. And so as long as we have their best interest in mind and we continue to kind of push the technology in a polite way, the interaction will come regardless of the vertical. It has to be done the right way.
I can speak to a travel advertiser that we had, kind of an international airline, and we were able to track, bookings that were booked, and throughout the campaign we we heard that we got 12 tickets that were purchased off of mobile banner ads directly, which to us was impressive given the kind of the cost of these things, and given the fact that it would be hard to imagine that there were that many users who were like, oh, I need to purchase a flight to a European destination. So we were extremely excited to get those kinds of results, and the client was as well.
In a quick example, in automotive, did just some quick checks of our logs. These days some people are saying that click-through rates, if you care about the clicks, are coming in, let's say, at a 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, something along those lines, and people are, semi-happy. Saw what I consider to be a run-of-the-mill campaign for an SUV, simple banner, 1.2 click rate. These things happen from time to time, so then I looked at the creative to see, okay, what do they do? It was very straightforward. There was an image of the product, and it was a brand people recognize. And that seemed to work in that case. As I hand off here, what I'll say, though, is personally, spending, let's say, a large majority of our time that's focused on advertising on banners at LSN, we do try to meet client needs related to performance, and at the same time, we try not to forget the branding element that came up earlier. And in fact, strategically as a company, we're going to be pushing harder and harder into the branding components of that, but it's harder to measure.
And I think to what you mentioned about 12 travel tickets, it's actually a phenomenal ROI for mobile when you consider what someone might have to go through to book a flight on a 4 or 5 inch screen. Where we're actually moving now is looking at how mobile plays with desktops, so how all of your screens work together. And what we've seen for an electronics manufacturer is consumers who have engaged, who have seen is one thing, but who have also engaged on mobile and tablet, spend more time engaging there than they do on desktop. But those same consumers are likely to go back to desktop to convert. And we're actually seeing in higher numbers, twice as high as someone who has only seen an ad or engaged with an ad on desktop. So, we know that mobile and tablet are having an impact on consumer decisions. Even if we can't follow the ROI chain on one single device, that's okay because no one uses one device, right? Everyone goes across screen. Everyone is living their lives in different points and places throughout the day. So it's about the impact that the banner has that maybe you don't see in traditional metrics, and you have to dig and look at attribution a little harder.
Okay, so this one's actually directed to Scott and Lars, more on the network, on the cell side. As usage is through the roof, as we all use our phones a million times a day, it's easier and easier for maybe some nebulous providers to start taking more and more personal information from us without us necessarily knowing. Most people don't really know about Apple ID for advertisers or publishers. Most people aren't necessarily opting out. Most people don't generally care about that stuff. I know, my wife doesn't, and that's generally my litmus test for most things. How are you guys dealing with privacy, given the ease with which we can access personal information, and given that it's still a little Wild West out there, how do banners relate to getting private information or anonymizing that information, and how are you guys as networks or vendors dealing with it?
Yeah, sure. I should probably check in with the privacy officer first before I answer this question, but what the heck? I'm just kidding. No, I think from our perspective, the IDFA, or the ID for advertisers, which was released with iOS 6, is a great solution. It's a random number that's assigned to a user, can't be tied back to personally identifiable information, and we really like that as a model. We actually don't get a lot of personally identifiable information in every ad request, even with the ad servers. There's we don't get phone numbers, and we don't get things like that. So to the degree that we want to do targeting, and we do want to do targeting, we've got to have some kind of a solution for cookies. We prefer random IDs that are affiliated with users, and that a person is a number, and that person can opt out like they can with the IDFA or like with a cookie. And then in the realm of Android, I think we're still TBD. I think Google's got some work to do to come up with some kind of a solution. They've got cookies for mobile web for some subset of Android devices, and then in-app Android, they're still using this UID thing. So from our perspective, we don't log those kinds of things that users can't opt out of. That's our take on it.
Yeah, so we have a similar approach with one big addition is we get first-party registration data, and we get people to opt into our terms of services and our privacy policy, and then we get a significant amount of personally identifiable information, everything from zip, household income, gender, preferences. We kind of build that profile over time, but we make it clear up front that they're opting into that as part of the program. And our system works. We have a rewards-based approach, and when you go to redeem a reward, whether it's a gift card or a sweepstakes or a donation, that's when you register for our service, and that's where we get, we now have millions of registered users who are opting in. So I'd say that's a big trend too. If you can establish a direct relationship with the consumer so they're very clear about what they're opting in for, then you avoid some of this more vague practice of what can we suck out without them knowing.
Just want to tag on to this. So I sit on the privacy board, the ad choices program, and I was very involved with that last year. Not so much this year, just because of business travel and some other commitments. But in the mobile space, we haven't started. The scrutiny hasn't even begun compared to what's happening with digital display. Like not even the tip of the iceberg. So. I don't think that consumer privacy issues are going away. I think that the ad choices program is a good start. I don't think it's been marketed as well as it should, and I don't think a lot of consumers understand what that means. But as soon as Washington, starts to dig hold in this information share and what's available in the mobile space with geofencing and serving ads based on geography and what's known by the cell carriers, it's an area that, as marketing professionals, we have to pay careful attention to, and how we protect consumer privacy and how we are very forward and outgoing about our policies and what's shared and what's not. It's going to be a critical time because I think that the scrutiny has barely started in the mobile space.
And to your point, I think we actually have to get ahead of it because once the government scrutiny starts, it's a lot worse than if you try to self-regulate.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I wanted to get into formats for a second, and one thing that I notice most days is that larger banners on tablets tend to perform a little better, especially if it's placed at the right time of day. What are you guys seeing across just daily buys and daily sells? In terms of tablet banners working, tablet banners initiating a larger rich media or video experience, throw in some day partying, maybe it works better at night when people are at home, and sort of that lean back couch surfing mode. But what are you guys seeing in terms of tablets and banners on tablets?
I'm happy to take it, to start. Without a doubt, there's a difference. I personally, just a personal belief, there's a really different mindset, a tablet user versus a mobile user versus a desktop user, and I think that the expectation for marketing to that consumer, it should be different. The creative should be different. The main call to action should be different. And if you have a good creative partner, or if that's done with one solution and you're syncing up media technology and the creative professional so that the creative message is designed for the environment, it makes sense. That's not a brilliant statement on my part. It's how we should be thinking about each of these spaces differently. But I'll go back to something I mentioned in the beginning, and I think you mentioned it as well a few times up here. This ability for the consumer to close out, to leave the environment if there's an expansion or a takeover of video in unit. One of my biggest dislikes right now, whether it's tablet or the mobile space, believe it or not, I think it's the milk board. They have this drop-down cow that takes you to this crazy survey. There's no way to get out of it. And it's the milk board. You're thinking, what are they trying to accomplish with this outside of, just it's bad design, it's a bad user experience. But whether it's products that we market or other advertisers out there, I always have a close eye on how the technology is developed and how they allow the consumer, if they choose to leave that experience, the interaction, and to some degree we still measure a click, but the differential from tablet to mobile, we see across our clients a really big difference. And I think it's because there's a different expectation. There's more time. The session length is longer as well. So it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, so the world of a mobile ad network or any ad network for that case is that you're put in a horse race with some of your competitors and you're expected to kind of perform and you got to hope that you are kind of above the line when it comes to optimization. So we look at all parameters as any indicators of where we can get an edge, and we certainly look at time of day. We look at creative execution type. We look at file size. File size makes a huge difference in mobile. If someone's on a Wi-Fi versus on a 3G, actually in either case, if we can get the ad to load fast, the invitation ad and then the expansion ad, if we can get those things to load fast, then we see much higher opportunities for people to respond. I think people have ADD on mobile, right? Like if it doesn't load up fast, they're gone, right? Second thing is, to your point, being able to go back to the experience you had before. So there's some level of trust that says, all right, I'll engage with this ad so long as that I know that I can go back to doing what I was doing before. So creative design's a big thing. And then believe it or not, one of the biggest criteria that we see that drives performance is carrier, right? So carrier implies certain things about a person, right? They might be a lower income person, they might be a higher income person. Depending on the kind of thing that we do, we see lots of different variants based on carrier. So oftentimes we'll zero in on that. And frankly, we see those parameters and then, regular optimization tactics like, optimizing by apps or sites as much bigger drivers of performance than time of day.
I would step back to something that's even broader than ads. It also applies to product design, and that is what I consider to be rule number one of mobile, which is start with the assumption that each platform is different and then work backwards into the similarities. Some of the biggest catastrophes that I've seen, either in products, in product building or ads, have been when somebody started with a campaign or a project and they said, look, we just want to make it the same across all platforms. And so you try to make a desktop web product live on a mobile phone, or you try to make a mobile phone product live on a tablet. That tends to be not as bad, but it leaves opportunity on the table. So I'd say that that's equally true of advertising. Next, there's a pretty significant difference in the use of video between phones and tablets. And time of day does matter. If people are in lean back mode late in the day, they're using a tablet, they're sitting on their sofa, and there's some compelling video in an ad, they're a lot more likely to engage on that. If somebody's on a phone and they're just trying to snack during the day, I consider it to be pretty bad practice to put a video in there, at least one that you're obliged to watch. And last but not least, just elaborating around the edges of this point about going back to the experience, if we show respect to consumers and we know they're going to get something else and we're making an ad available, then we ought to make it really easy for people to opt in or opt out most of the time. And my specific creative pet peeve, which I've seen a bunch of lately, unfortunately, is when somebody seems to think that the way you keep people engaged in an ad is by making the X to get out of it really small. Drives me crazy. And so I hope for everybody in this room who is thinking about designing ads and being effective in mobile, actually it's counterproductive, both for us and also for anybody else out there, because people don't want to go there the next time because they don't know how to get out. So I'd advise that we make it really easy to both engage in and also move back out. That helps with the sustainability of the industry.
Yeah, one thing I'd add to that, and Lewis, I think you bring up a great point in talking about iPad, but it also goes in general. If you think about the consumption patterns that we all have, you're either going to be using your phone as a utility or you're going to be using it to, as you said, snack throughout the day or in between things. And too often now the industry will deliver ads really at any time without looking at that high-level context. So I could be running to catch a cab, and all of a sudden, a banner pops up, and there's a CPM charge around it. And of course, I'm not going to click on it. Even if it was the greatest thing in the world, I probably wouldn't click on it because I'm not in that mode to consume. So some of these things, it helps to take a step back, and instead of getting really into hyper-targeting and local and day party and all these other things, which are important parts of a campaign, just making sure you're delivering it in the right context is very important, whether it's phone or tablet.
So one last question, then we can take some questions. On the opposite end of banners is native. Native is something that kind of annoys me on a daily basis because it's inherently nebulous. No one's really defined it well. It means a lot of different things to a lot of people. I think it's a big buzzword for 2013 and probably likely to stay for a while. Lars, I actually want to start with you. When you hear native, what does it mean to you? I think with SessionM and your products, you're probably the closest to it. What does that mean?
Yeah, at first it's confusing. It confuses me too. And I wouldn't say that we are native necessarily, although we are trying to get out of the world of just putting a banner on top of an application. We're trying to be more incorporated into the actions of an app. So in that context, we're native in that we are saying we're working with a developer, we're letting them define certain actions of a consumer and when they want to have an ad be part of that experience. So that makes us more native. I think it's really for me, part of native just comes back to, can you make the experience better, more compelling, and can it have value? And I'll end with that value theme, that it's pretty common sense. If an ad is not delivering value of some sort, it doesn't justify the time. And I think what people are getting excited about this year is that native seems to be a way to do that, but no one really exactly knows what native is going to be, and also how does that scale? How do you actually do native at scale? And I think, 5 years ago, we saw the first Pepsi branded palm tree on a game, and everyone got excited about that, but it wasn't scalable, and it wasn't really the way to go. So I think we're going to have to find this balance between scale. It's almost like the mid-level native experience is going to win out in the short term.
Saying mobile native advertising is a little bit like saying in-car entertainment. It can mean 100 different things to 100 different people. And so we have to start with the definition. He was referring to it. For me, for starters, most people when they talk about it are specifically referring to something in an app, on the grounds that for mobile web, it's often hard to take advantage of native capabilities. Not always, but a lot of the time. And then the next thing you go to, okay, is it taking advantage of the native capabilities of that device? iPhone, an iPad, an Android device, a phone or tablet, etc., Windows Phone, mobile. Or alternatively, is it embedding something like a sponsored content in an app like Zeit or some of the others? And so I think we could do some work as an industry to define that. It's clearly a buzzword. I also find that as big of a topic it's hard for me to go through a single day without having this topic come out in some significant way in some significant meeting. On the other hand, the vast majority of what we're doing is not whatever it is, but there's going to be a lot more of it.
I'm just thinking this is going to take a committee about 12 months to figure out how to define this. But really, when I hear native nowadays, it's the native app going to iOS and Android makes plenty of sense. Now it seems to be more about integrated with content is the way I'm hearing it. And similar to just about every other medium out there, we are going to have to find a way to make it apparent that while it might look like this is not actual publisher editorial content, right? Everyone said respect the consumer. That's going to be a big part of it. And if it's not, what is the actual execution, right? Are you basically just throwing up a banner that's the equivalent of a few pages in a magazine that say advertorial on top that no one will ever read? So we really need to work on this and figure out what is native to individual sites. In that way, I don't believe it's a scale play. It's more about integration and going deep with a partner that makes a lot of sense for your brand. And it's going to take a while to really come around to a settled place.
So we think of it as anytime a consumer is online, on mobile, on tablet, they want information, education, they want to be entertained, or maybe they want to transact. They don't want to be tricked. They typically don't want to be sold. So advertising as content, think about the Outbrain model. It's not an advertorial, it's not pages of content. It's a relevant piece of content that connects with a consumer intent, that matches what their need is. It makes sense. It does well. It's polite. It doesn't need to be closed out and pushed away. It connects with consumer intent. It's the way to go.
When I think of native, I think of custom, right? I think of sponsorships and those kinds of things. And I mean, is BuzzFeed the one that's to blame for this whole native thing? Yeah, okay. So, I mean, they've got a really big site. And they've got an interesting ad format, which is to put that little logo underneath some of the posts. And I think it works really great for BuzzFeed. It doesn't work really great for every site. So that's why I see it as a custom thing, at least from the perspective of a network. I will say this, though, for custom native sponsorship kind of stuff, I think it's important if there are any publishers here that you can, if you're really heavy on app, right? Like if, let's say, MapMyFitness or something like that, where most of your traffic is people using an app, they can be designed in a way that have dynamic elements that look like custom content, that do look like native advertising, that can be swapped out. And if an app hasn't done that to start with, then getting an app updated and then get the users to update it and all that other stuff is just like a major headache that we don't actually have in online. Right? In online, you can take down a thing and it's good to go the next day. In apps, it's a lot more complicated. So I think publishers do have to think well ahead of time to think what custom kind of sponsorships might we actually want to have so that they can have dynamic content that can be swapped in and out dynamically.
Cool. Steve, questions? guess we were that interested.
Hi, Livia Byrne. I'm a director of mobile product marketing at WebMD. For a significant portion of my client base, specifically pharmaceutical advertisers, the real estate for the smartphone banner is basically a non-starter. All of the advertising has to be unbranded. So it's, what, in your opinion, what is the future of display advertising for advertisers for whom the real estate is really an investment challenge? It makes the platform an investment challenge.
Scott, you should.
Yeah. So specifically, what's the challenge that the banner itself is not big enough, or?
Yeah, basically the regulatory challenges with pharmaceutical advertising mandate that initial invitation is unbranded.
Got it. So we actually do a lot of work with pharma, and the way we get around that is it's the expansion panel. So again, I think going in there with the philosophy, this sort of invitation philosophy to engage, and that the ad is actually the expansion panel. Some pharma brands, I know the ISI has to be scrolling, right? This is probably what you live and breathe every day. Some, it just has to share equal space. But we've successfully gotten around that for a number of large pharmaceutical brands. As you know, the creative takes forever to get through the legal teams and all that. But we've had great success with that. So that's what I'd recommend.
Great. James Lee, I work for investment firm COSA. 3 questions here. First, do you guys have any data on ad impressions on apps versus mobile web? That being one. And also second is in app advertising, the user experience, at least from my perspective, isn't very good. It's like me playing Angry Birds, I see something to download, something else. So that experience is not very good for me specifically. What would you do specifically? What is the best practices that you found to create a better advertising user experience, in an environment, especially in an app that people are immersed with the content itself? And also lastly, not sure you guys have any experience handling or managing Facebook advertising. My biggest concern is ad load within the newsfeed, mobile newsfeed, where real estate is really scarce. Any data around that will be helpful. Thank you.
Well, I'll try to remember the questions and hit at least 2 of them. So for starters, in terms of mobile web versus app, what we find is that mobile web tends to be the wide reach play and apps tend to be deeper engagement per user. And so you might, in our case, you'll see more app ad inventory and more app page views, even though the reach figures are a lot different than that. In terms of the implementation of banner ads in an app, in some apps it looks like it's raining ads. That doesn't seem like such a good idea for a lot of us. It doesn't seem like it's super consumer friendly. On the other hand, hey, let's be real about ads. If you ask most consumers just a single question, and that question is, do you want ads in your product? The answer is going to be no. I mean, we lived this when we were starting all this and rolling out the first ads. If, on the other hand, you ask people, do you want great products, and is it reasonable for a media company to figure out a way to monetize those, the answer is yes. And everybody gets it. And so it comes down to some amount of balance there. And so what I would say, you get down to things like the number of ads displayed, frequency capping, type of creative, ad units in the app or mobile website, et cetera, et cetera. It is okay to have an ad visible on a screen. But then you have to think carefully about how much real estate it takes, and that's kind of a longer conversation.
Yeah, I'd like to add a number 2, because we work with a bunch of game developers, and just what you're describing is what we say is not effective, and it's frustrating and an irritating experience. So the first thing is to work with a developer to figure out the right time to serve up a possible ad opportunity. So our approach is we work with them, they take our software, they figure out what trigger points around engagement they want to deliver an ad, and then, so say it could be clearing a level in a game or coming back at the beginning of a game. And then what we do is we give them the opportunity to be rewarded and recognized for their time. So they have a chance to claim an achievement, opt into an ad, so it has to be invitational, or skip it. We talk about that easy way out of it. They can either skip it or get out of it. And it becomes this experience that is, back to the value piece, it's rewarding somebody, it's valuing their time, it's saying if you invest in this experience, if you watch this 15, 30-second video, it's going to be worth your while. And as a result, we see unbelievable rates as opposed to the 0.5% click-through. We get a 71% opt-in rate. Literally 71% of the people that see the ads will opt into it, and we get a 95% completion rate. And probably most importantly, we get unbelievable metrics in the back end in terms of brand association, purchase intent, recall, all the things you want to measure. So that is an effective way. It's not the only way. It's just one of effective way to go about it and change its banner-centric approach and make it much more value-oriented.
We have a question.
I wanted to, what was your question about Facebook?
I was worried about the ad load in mobile use.
The ad load?
Yes, how many ad units they can put in per page.
Oh.
That becomes a concern for me.
Okay.
As an investor, I wonder if you have done any management of the advertising on Facebook specifically.
I haven't, but I'll just say this. I find Facebook's current mobile advertising highly inspirational for me as the CEO of a company that's trying to develop better targeting. I think their mobile ads are very well targeted. I wake up every morning and I see an app that I want to download. It's unbelievable. I've actually never seen such good targeted ads, and I'm using that absolutely as an inspiration for our own targeting. I wake up and I'm like, the SF parking app, like I'm like, oh, I need that. You know, it's like I think it's great, and you know, people are scrolling through their news feed. My hat's off to Facebook. I think that ad unit's great.
Scott, I would second that. I think the work that they've done is very, very good. The share of voice, or the attention to their ads, and the amount of real estate, which is your question, per ad, it's visually pleasing. Right now, at least in my opinion, it's not overwhelming. And you don't have to click like, you don't have to share. Those metrics are there, they're available, but there's a good branding element, and that's a big part of the game. So I like what they're doing. As their stock price fluctuates, it'll be interesting to see how they continue to push the monetization of that.
We have one more question over here.
Yeah, I have 5 questions, but I'll condense it into one. And from the Facebook, I just want to thank everybody, because I'm going to go out and buy the out of the money calls, long-term calls. So the question is really for Louis and Scott. Louis by way of CNN, and Scott by way of serving video to mobile. And there's a huge divergence between pricing of mobile video, where I can deliver up to 30-second video spot to a highly engaged mobile user, uninterruptible, unskippable. They have to consume that media payload. The pricing on CNN.com, and they don't distinguish between mobile and online, it's all the same price. No targeting run of sight is $80 CPM. Category targeting is $160 CPM. And logged in user, email, gender, and zip code is $4 to $8 per view. Whereas mobile pricing for a mobile video right now, if I go through an ad network, is at best $12 CPM. How do we narrow that gap?
It's a good thing Louis doesn't work at CNN anymore.
That's all right. So my first comment will be very predictable, and that is I certainly can't speak on behalf of CNN, and I wouldn't want to. But the numbers that you said, I don't know exactly what the origin of all of them is. I wouldn't say that they're completely representative of a bunch of the ad buys that I saw. So to start, we'd have to have another conversation.
It's last week's numbers.
Which is fine. But looking across the industry, you see multiple perspectives. I'm going to go back to mobile rule number 1, which is start with the assumption that mobile is different and then work backwards into the similarities. And it may be that there are certain things that you can do with targeting on mobile devices, whether it's a phone or a tablet, that are different. It also may be that you choose to have the same pricing across all digital platforms, which I've actually seen done quite a bit. So I perceive, running into a bunch of publishers around the marketplace, there's no standard for how to do that. I would say, generally speaking, that there is a premium for video CPMs as opposed to display CPMs, even with rich media. That's very common. The only place where I see that them kind of approaching the same thing is where you have highly targeted sections. So if it's an entertainment section or a technology section or a sports section for a certain demo. Long conversation, I'd be happy to talk with you, but I think video is coming along a little bit more slowly in terms of its evolution than display, but it's catching up.
If you want to narrow the divide between network and CNN rates, I'm happy to raise our rates if you'd like. Just kidding.
All right,
Separate from that, I think what you're actually witnessing is that a lot of video inventory in mobile is in games, right? So a lot of the inventory you're getting is not CNN quality. It's not pre-roll. It's it's interstitial, basically. And so that's why the prices are lower, and they should be.
Yeah, and to that point, we do see with content out of gaming that's considered more premium, we see 3x to 4x that in mobile video.
Okay, the thing that I would say is mobile's tough. Mobile video is even tougher across the board. It's just the technology to deliver it, something that's not cached, something that is actually in stream. There are very few people who can do that, and they tend to be technology providers that service premium players like a Hulu or an NBC or an ABC. And the guys that we're talking about on the gaming side, while very sophisticated, they're not necessarily able to charge higher rates, just because.
There's one other thing that I would point out also, because it gets to the commoditization issue. Not all inventory is created equal. This is a general statement across the industry, and we tend to lump a lot of stuff together. It could be, mobile phone inventory is this, or tablet inventory is that for display, or video, et cetera, et cetera. You can look at just about any category, whether it's news, entertainment, social, et cetera, and find some tiers of those that kind of justify a premium, and then that gets into a long conversation too.
Craig, panel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take about a 10-minute coffee break. Grab some coffee, but come quickly back in. We're going